our community is definitely coming to a point where we've seen enough, we've faced enough, we've felt enough, we've dealt with enough. Over 40,000 people are dead in Gaza. Gaza is essentially destructed to a point of no return. It's going to take decades to rebuild it. The West Bank has seen its deadliest 10 months ever. And I think Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims in general are just very, very disheartened with the political system here in America, with our legislators here in America. The overall feeling the past 10, 11 months of Israeli genocide in Gaza, backed and funded by the American government and American dollars, is a huge sense of hopelessness, a huge sense of despair, a huge sense of grief. I think right after October 7th, there was huge momentum and a lot of mobilizations, organizing was like skyrocketing. And I think the community now is just very, very tired, and they're very, very, they're grieving immensely. There are many families here in Chicago that are directly affected by what's happening in Gaza. They have hundreds of family members in Gaza that have been displaced, that have been killed. And there are also many families here in Chicago that have family in the West Bank, and which has also experienced high levels of militarization, a lot of violence by the Israeli occupational forces. My own family has been very, very negatively affected by the past 10 months of just increased presence and violence by the IOF in the West Bank. So I think the main feeling by the community is just a lot of grief, a lot of loss, and a lot of suffering, and we're just really, really tired of our people being constantly targeted, our people being constantly killed and murdered by the same systems that we are now expected to put back into office. And I think that's something that weighs heavily on the community. And I also think the overall community just of Americans who stand in solidarity with Palestine are also very much at that point. Because America is giving over $3 billion of aid to Israel every single year, an additional $13 billion after October 7th, and yet there are still so many domestic issues that we as a country need to face. There's huge numbers of houselessness, unaffordable health care. Americans are barely being able to live paycheck to paycheck monthly, and yet we're aiding and supporting a genocide overseas. So I think that's really the change here, is that there's just been a lot of distrusting now in the American political system, and with this election coming up in November, I think it's going to be very clear that has happened. And it's already been clear. There was an uncommitted campaign, and I think a lot of people in the community now may just have lost all faith or hope in voting. I know possibly the older generation definitely feels that way. We've just been seeing the same images coming out of Gaza time and time again of our people being slaughtered, our people being maimed, our people being displaced, our people being dehumanized to an extent that is so unfathomable. And we're just being forced to sit and watch it. And of course we're mobilizing, of course we're organizing, and of course we're trying to speak to whoever we can speak to. We're trying to do as much as we can, but at some point it gets very, very traumatic to just have to deal with that every single day. And definitely there are a lot of people here, a lot of families here who have ties back to Gaza. It's always bad news coming out of Gaza, and I think after one point their trauma becomes so much that you can't even feel it anymore. They don't know how to handle it anymore. And same thing with the West Bank. It's really, really difficult. The conditions there for living are really, really difficult. And I think it's definitely something that we're all going through here. And we want to help our people back home as much as we possibly can. That's why we continue to organize and we continue to mobilize, because no matter how hard it gets, and it's very, very hard, we at least know that we are on the right side of history, that we stand with justice and we stand with peace, and that one day we will face liberation.